For the Proforma enhancements, I'd like to take you through it and just talk about the project billing workflow in general. As you're getting ready to bill for a construction project, the work is completed. Well, then the accounts payable bill is received for that work performed. So maybe their subcontractors, the framers or the electricians are now sending the invoices in for the work they've completed. Well, as you're looking at now doing the bill to the customer, you review the project expenses, see what can get billed in this period. Then you generate the invoice to the owner or the customer, maybe an AIA document, a G702 or 703. And then you might need to provide the details of those expenses that you're billing for as backup and substantiate the invoice that you've just presented to your customer. Well, then as that flow continues on, now you receive payment from the customer and the owner. Well, now in situations where you were billed by your subcontractor for an expense, now you want to be able to pay those bills because you've gotten paid by your customer. So you want to have an easy way to see the expenses related to the invoice that was just paid, and then simply make those accounts payable payments to the appropriate vendors. Well, prior to 24R1, if you think of that workflow of pay when paid, or now as you're getting and you're assembling the customer invoices for the costs incurred on the project and what you need to do to justify the amount that you're billing. Well, those amounts can come from many different areas. Specifically, if they come from a subcontractor, part of your agreement with that subcontractor may be that, well, the subcontractor gets paid when you get paid, otherwise known as pay when paid. And then from cash flow purposes, this allows contractors to receive the funds from their clients prior to paying the sub-tier contractors and reducing the overall risk and helping with cash flow as you're running and organizing your businesses. But the ability to then link those expenses that you've incurred to the actual bill itself helps streamline the workflow and provide the information necessary for you to reconcile the bills, work the payment process, and what needs to happen. So before 24R1, you'd enter the accounts payable bill tied to the project. You generate the customer bill via the Proforma, which generates the accounts receivable invoice. The cash comes in for that invoice, and maybe you've set up a business event or a notification to alert someone that the cash came in for that bill to help streamline that workflow. But then you had to run an open AP document for the project, review what bills were tied to that specific AR invoice and Proforma, and then go ahead and select those bills for payment by project. Well, at 24R1, I'm happy to say that we've added a side panel inside of Proforma for linking that accounts payable bill to that Proforma invoice. As you can see on the screen, you have the Proforma entry, the side panel that says linked cost transactions. Now you start to add those cost transactions, and you start to accumulate and build what transactions are tied to either the individual Proforma line itself or the overall Proforma. And now you can bring all those expenses together to help substantiate the bill and then make the pay when paid workflow even easier as it's going through. Viewing and really what we're focusing in on here with 24R1 as part of that project billing workflow is how to review and mark those expenses to be billed. And now let me show you what we've done and go ahead and do a demonstration. The first thing we'll take a look at is a specific project here, the Beach Hotel and Condos. We'll look at a specific Proforma that we're creating. In this case, it's for our application number 8 and the next progress billing. You'll notice in the upper right-hand corner is a function that says linked cost transactions. So this function will now tell us which AP bills we've already have associated with this particular Proforma. If I want to add any new ones, I simply hit the plus sign. It takes me to the existing project transactions that have not been linked yet, and I can easily go through and identify which transactions I want to add into this Proforma bill. So I'll just randomly pick these 3 bills that need to go back for the insurance, the windows and the doors, add that into the Proforma. Now those line items are added into this particular Proforma, and if I wanted to associate them to a specific Proforma line number, then I have the ability to say which line number is that Proforma or do these expenses relate to, and I can add that specific expense right down into that item. So in this case, I'll put the exterior paint tied to the finishes line. And that's simple. Come right in and now add those cost transactions into the overall pro forma, or in this case, I'll blank this out and say the specific pro forma in general. What are those line numbers? Even giving me the possibility to look at the specific invoice information. If I have the attachment related to that transaction, being able to see that invoice or see that transaction tied right into that activity. This allows me to see the linked transactions for the specific pro forma. And now when that pro forma might get paid, I'm going to prepare payments. I can go in and possibly add an activity right in prepare payments to go out and look at the pro forma costs, call up that same project and that same pro forma information. So that was pro forma 56. Now it shows me which activities or which cost items are on that pro forma, and now I can decide which ones do I want to pay as it relates to that accounts payable bill right back into the pro forma, helping me with that payment process. Now that we've seen the demonstration of what's in 24R1, let's review back and think about the project billing workflow and the improvements. Well, at 24R1, we've now linked the expense to that invoice. What does that allow us to do in future releases? We'll now update the substantiated billing reports and documents that we have tied to that pro forma invoicing. So in future releases, look to have the exact expense tied to the substantiated bill, the images associated with it. So more things coming with substantiated billing. And then how additional ways we can help with the automation of the pay when paid. Right now, if you think about it, and what you saw in the demonstration is you can add that side panel to other areas inside of Acumatica, so you can simply see the expenses that were tied to the pro forma invoice and the accounts receivable bill, maybe inside of cash receipts or inside the accounts payable payment processing. But think about now how we can automate that and continue on within the overall process of accounts payable, the bills, the expenses, project billing, and how we can help with your day-to-day operations.